Welcome guys. Today we're going to be looking at this is by watch data, what you learn at every single age. Apparently. Okay. Okay, now with just 10 seconds old, man, imagine being that young. Once a baby takes its first breath, a number of changes occurs in the infant's lungs. So within 10 seconds you breathe for the first time. Yeah, I would think so. After 2 months old, you start actually recognizing faces. Studies have shown that newborns prefer to look at familiar faces like your mum. At just 3 months old, you start to know how to smile. Some researchers suggest that this may be the early social smiles. Wow. Wow, that's pretty neat. Within 4 months old, you know how to roll. That's interesting. That's better. Okay, yeah, you learn how to roll. This begins with babies rocking themselves back and forth. Interesting. When you're 5 months old, you start to know how to love your parents. A secure attachment bond teaches your baby how to trust you. Aww. Within 7 months old, you start to know how to crawl. Before babies can crawl, they have to develop skills like head and arm control. So if you're a retard like me, and you couldn't even move your arm, you just couldn't crawl, you'd just be like, jokes. If you're 11 months old, you start saying your first words at 11 months old. Okay, by around 8 to 12 months old, babies will start to begin attaching meaning to words, like penis. Starts with a P. Isn't that nice? You just saw ahead. Anyways, when you're finally a year old, you start to actually know how to walk. A later walker may indicate that your baby is more cautious, like Jack. When you're 1.3 years old, forming short sentences. Early sentences are formed with a subject and at least a verb. Yeah, I learned that when I was 1.3 years old. Now, 1.6 years old, you start to understand rules. At this age, rules are designed to keep a child safe. Yeah, like the government. At 2 years old, you finally know how to scribble. These scribbles typically result in broad shoulder movements. Interesting. Also, you guys, sorry for how low the quality is. I'm trying to fix it. Like, trust me, it's not that bad. If you see this PC, man, big boy. Yeah, sorry about the stuff. You guys saw ahead again. Now, at 2.4 years old, you realize your gender. You could be a croissant, an airplane, a mountain lion. Who knows, man? I'm a guy. Yeah. You finally know your gender. Gender identity typically develops in stages around 2.4 years old. What? So you're either like you're in the bathtub and you're like, hey, what is this? Oh, I have a penis. Around 2.8 years old, you start to know how to run. They unconsciously strengthen bones and improve coordination. Ah, that's neat. At 3 years old, you learn how to throw. Babies love to engage in the repeated throwing and dropping behaviors. Oh, isn't that nice? At 3.1 years old, you learn how to ride a tricycle. Riding a trike requires children to learn how to control their direction and coordination and pedal. At 3.7 years old, you identify basic colors. Experts say that high contrast colors aid baby's development. Damn, why does this headphone look goofy? We don't even need it. At 4 years old, you start to learn to swim. At this age, kids can usually learn basic water survival skills. Again, sorry about the quality. I know it sucks, okay? We're gonna fix it. At 4.2 years old, you know how to form friendships. I say, yeah, I was probably around this age. Jack didn't really have any friends. Okay. You forming friendships. Childhood friendships teach sharing and communication skills. Yeah? And now the friends now just suck. At 4.9 years old, you will realize how different shapes look. At this age, babies should be able to identify the majority of basic shapes. I'm still trying to learn shapes. At 5 years old, you start playing cooperatively. This is when children start working together towards a common goal. Like if you're playing Fortnite, which I don't know why people still play that game. You're like, oh, well, we have to win. I guess I should invite Daniel over so we can win. Daniel. At 5.4 years old, you start learning how to write letters. One of the easiest ways kids learn how to write letters is to begin tracing them. That's why they made me trace them. Bro, I hated that. Man, I had a teacher named Mrs. Moon, and oh my god, she sucked. I remember we were trying to fold this piece of paper this one time to make it was a I love you gift for Mother's Day. And I kept messing it up because I didn't know how to do it. She wasn't explaining it well to me. Every other kid was succeeding. So she was like, Jack! I was like, oh, what are you saying, man? She was like, man, God. And she couldn't do anything, so she just took the paper from me and did it for me. And then I started, crying. And, man, I also pooped my pants in kindergarten. That's a story for another time. At 6 years old, you learn how to tie your shoes. Learning to tie shoelaces requires patience and determination. Yeah, I feel like I definitely wasn't 6 when I started doing that. I was probably like 9. Because I was just like, bro, what? I remember I had to watch a whole bunch of YouTubes. But now we got shoes with laces on them. There's a whole bunch of different ways you can tie them. At 6.3 years old, you learn how to play video games. Oh, man. Video game addictions affects between 1.7% and 10% of Americans. Yeah, I'm in that percentage. Video games are fun, bro. And I still get good grades, okay? So calm down. At 6.5 years old, 6.7? Oh, no. At 6.5 years old, you learn how to count numbers. Some scientists believe that we are born with an intense sense of numbers. That's actually really cool. Wow. This quality sucks. At 6.8 years old, you learn how to use scissors. Cutting with scissors is something that may take children a while to learn. Yeah. Yeah, just squeeze your fingers. Jokes. At 7 years old, you learn how to read basic books. Yeah, my sister's 7 right now. She's learning how to read books. She's pretty good at it, too. I wasn't. I know that. Okay, studies show reading to kids as young as 9 months can benefit development. Yeah, I read some books. I usually read them at nighttime though. I read Great Battles for Boys. That's a good book. It's about people killing themselves. Jokes. At 7.2 years old, you learn how to do agility in sports. The focus at this age is about getting knowledge and awareness of the body. Man, I'm getting some reading today. I don't like it. I'm just kidding. At 7.4 years old, you can tell the climb of a clock. So 7-year-olds know how to tell the time of a clock, but Jack doesn't. Yeah, make fun of me all you want. But when COVID hit, I was in like fourth or no, it's probably in third or second grade or so. And man, I missed out. That's a good year. You got to go to third grade. You learn a lot of stuff. I like to tell a clock. Yeah, I still don't know how to tell a clock. No. Anyways, at 7.7 years old, you learn how to be responsible. Social problems arise from the lack of understanding duties and responsibilities. So you learn how to be responsible. Is this for girls or boys? Because I feel like boys are just like, and girls are professional, because that's what they say. At 8 years old, you know how to do basic math. Kids start learning math from the moment they start exploring the world. Yeah, I say it was around that time, but I never liked it, man. It's just like my teachers they would get mad at me because I wasn't understanding. They're like, I don't get paid enough for this. I'd be like, yeah, but you gotta teach me, bro. You signed up for this. You gotta teach me. If there's any kids watching this video right now, like if the parents are letting their kids watch this, I'm talking to you parents right now. You gotta click off this video because I'm about to reveal a truth about Santa. Okay, so I'll give you 10 seconds to get off. Okay, I'm just protecting the kids and making them make their lives a little more happy. Okay, let's continue. All right. Now, at 8.2 years old, you learn the truth about Santa. There's no such thing as being too old to believe in Santa. So yeah, if you didn't know, Santa is not real. Oh, my sister's watching this Sorry. Dang it. I would say I was around that age though. At 8.3 years old, you understand maps. Learning how to read and use a map teaches kids spatial skills. Yeah, I feel like in this era, I've known how to use a map, a digital one, and real life maps. Maps are cool. My dad made maps for Edwards Air Force Base. I got to visit it one day, and man, it was cool. But then he got a raise, so. Anyways, at 9 years. Is this all the way? Okay. At 9 years old, you learn how to manage personal hygiene, unlike Jack. Good hygiene is critical for preventing the spread of infectious diseases. I'm just joking, guys. I put on deodorant and I shower every day. Not even kidding. And you know what makes me shower every day? Because I got a new shampoo and it smells so nice. It's lime and cedar wood. I'm telling you guys a lot of personal stuff. Anyways, at 10 years old, you start to debate simple topics. This builds kids' critical thinking, communication, and confidence. Yeah. I remember I was in a debate club. I gotta stop telling y'all stories. You have to pay for that. I'm just kidding. When I was in this place called The Village. I was not 10. In fact, I was 13. But we started doing this thing called argument class. I was like, what the hell? And yeah, we just started arguing with each other. And apparently it was to build skills. Yeah. I mean, it made sense. It was just a little weird. At 10 and a half years old, you start to iron your clothes. I've never used an iron in my whole life. It teaches you the importance of maintaining personal appearance. Oh, well, I wash my clothes. I did my own laundry. I don't need an iron. Okay, now at 11 years old, you learn how to fight. Nope, not Jack. If he tried to get in a fight, he would just like leave. And somebody would hit him in the back of the head. He'd go into a coma and wake up like 20 years later. Be like, oh, what is going on? Jack, you're almost 40. Well, no, I'm not. Oh, yeah. Anyways, at 11 years old, you learn how to fight. Children and adults of all ages benefit from martial arts training. I did martial arts. I remember that. And I don't know why, but this video is making me like have so many relive memories now. But I was in martial arts and I did it for like 20 minutes and I was done. I went with my brother and we went to this martial arts. I think it was called ninjutsu or something like ninjutsu. But we went into this building and there was these cool shirts that had the logo on them. I was like, ah, sick, man. But as soon as I got in there, they're like, all right, you're gonna be paired with this guy. And he's this really chubby kid. I was like, oh, okay. And I think I was like 11 or so. And I went up to him. I'm like, yo, what's up, man? And he just like threw me on the ground. I started getting choked out. I was like, what the But then this guy's like, all right, make sure to tap his shoulder if you want to get out. I was like, okay. So I tapped it and yeah, that was really scary. But this video is nice. Okay, at 11.4 years old, you learn what puberty is. It causes physical changes and affects boys and girls differently. Yeah, you start to realize your penis is getting bigger. So immature. But yeah, puberty. If you guys ever got the talk, that was interesting. I had it with my dad in the car, and then I told my brother, and that's how he knows. Yeah, so my brother never got the full talk. Yeah. At 11.8 years old, you start to think logically. It helps children solve problems and make decisions. Yeah. Yeah, man. Brains are cool. If you guys saw my don't blink video, that was strange. You died at the end. Guess I just spoiled it. You guys should watch it. That's pretty interesting. Very low quality video. 12 years old, you start to realize how to develop identity. Often a child's sense of identity can be shaped by their experiences. Yeah. I mean, I guess if you were like hit as a kid or something, you'd be different. But if you were just a spoiled ass brat with a PC, an Xbox, a monitor, a phone, I'm not spoiled, guys. I'm so grateful for all this stuff. I saved up for this PC, okay? And my dad helped me with half of it. Yeah, interesting. My brother just walked in, and my sister, whatever. At 12.9 years old, you learn how to handle peer pressure. Oh, dude, peer pressure is so horrible. That's how I found out about porn. But we're not going to go into that. Anyways, it helps you make independent choices and resist negative influences. Yeah, for real. If you ever get peer pressure, guys, just say, hey, off, man. Get away. The quality will improve next video, I promise you. Maybe not. Anyways, at 13 years old, you start understanding each other's emotions. This helps you develop empathy and improve social skills. Yeah. Okay, 13.5. So I feel like I'm 13.7. I have a couple months left to go. Okay, how to form deep friendships. You have to practice trust, communication, and empathy for this. Real, man. That's actually kind of real. I don't have any friends, except for my cousin, but sometimes they're dicks. At 14 years old, you start to know how to cook basic food. Yeah, man. Cooking basic food, man. Yeah, I have to say I was about 11 when I started making food. But now, that was just like goofy stuff, like ramen and stuff. But yeah, just like this. Cooking gives children a sense of accomplishment and self resilience. Bro, that's so real, man. If you cook yourself up some food, you'd be like, 14 and a half years old, you start doing abstract math. Understanding algebra, and especially abstract algebra, can be incredibly challenging. Yeah, algebra is not fun. There's some parts of algebra that are like super easy, but then it starts getting so hard, and you're just like, yeah, fuck. Man, Mrs. Grimm is my math teacher, and man, she's so old. So that's why I do some online, and I go to schools. My life is really easy. Let's continue. I keep getting carried away. Okay, at 14.8 years old, you start to admit your mistakes. Children seek guidance from adults when they feel safe in admitting mistakes. I'm not even 14.8 years old yet, but I admit my mistakes almost every time, man. Like, that's just something that's part of maturity, and I feel like if you don't admit your mistakes, you're kind of gay. Jokes. At 15 years old, you learn how to use social media. Social media platforms can have both positive and negative effects on children. Really? Social media is interesting. The only social media I use is YouTube. That's literally it. And I don't not want to have TikTok for all the data it takes from you. YouTube does it too, but it's less. You get more money with YouTube, um, Instagram, Facebook. I think I'm sticking with YouTube. You know, my mom, she's a therapist. She said that ever since social media was around, depression rates have been up so much because people are posting online like, I have such a perfect husband and stuff, and then they feel bad about themselves. But then you look in the future on them and they're like, we just broke up. So y'all just stay off social media sometimes, man. I post videos for people to enjoy and to make them laugh. I make myself laugh. I watch my videos sometimes and they're really funny. At 15.6 years old, you learn how to do basic budgeting skills. Research shows that today's children aren't getting the financial education they need. Do you guys know why that is? Because stupid ass people like Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, um, Trump, they're all just so goofy, man. Like, do you know why you don't get the financial education? It's because it isn't supplied because they realize that if you guys know how to make money, the rich people are just going to get more and more poor because people are going to stop buying their stuff and go with the smarter guys that actually care about things. So they're not, it's just so gay. God damn. Sorry about my cursing. Sorry about my cursing, everybody. I'm going to lower it. I'm just saying goofy stuff, okay? For all the gay people out there, we respect you all the way, bro. Do what you like, man. So yeah, gays are totally fine, okay? At 16 years old, you start to realize the purpose of goals. It teaches planning, persistence, and the value of effort. Yeah, I feel like I have so many goals right now, and I'm working towards them so good. Like becoming an Army helicopter pilot or the Air Force C-130. That's what I've been trying to do. But we'll see what happens. Okay. At 16.3 years old, you realize how to make love. Between the ages of 16 and 20, half the population loses their virginity. I'm probably still gonna be a virgin at like 55. Jokes. But yeah, is this saying you learn how to or you do? No, that makes sense because it says 16 20. So that pretty much means you're gonna have at 16.3. Wear a condom. At 16.8 years old, you realize how to drive. Why am I saying realize? On average, we drive about 8,000 miles a year. Yeah. Okay. No. I don't believe that. My dad, whenever he has to go to work, it's so many miles each time he has to go, and he does it like every day. That's why he's a great dad. But 8,000, I feel like he could do that in no time, or at least less time than that time in a year. At 17 years old, you learn how to get a job. 60% of jobs are found through networking, not online. That is interesting, actually. Huh. So at 17, you get a job. I don't know. I heard that at 16, you can like work at Walmart and stuff, or like McDonald's. I don't know. I'm not there yet. This light is killing me. At 18 years old, you can now vote. Yeah, America. About 66% of eligible voters participated in the 2020 presidential election. That's cool. Can you not vote, or is it illegal? I'm the kind of YouTuber that's gonna Google it for y'all. Is it illegal to not vote? Okay, let's go AI mode. Is it illegal? Okay, it's not illegal. Oh wow, I did not know it's not illegal. Let's continue, shall we, guys? I suppose you guys couldn't see the full screen. Whatever. At 19 years old, do you know how to open a bank account? Yes. Ah, man, I remember when I was 19. That was a good year, man. Okay, about 76.2% of all accounts are checking accounts and saving accounts. That's cool. I don't know what that means. At 20 years old, you know how to cook for yourself. Didn't we just do? Okay, if you really want to become a good cook, you have to commit and do it regularly, or else you die. At 21 years old, you learn how to live alone. In 2020, 26% of occupied U.S. households had one person living alone. You know, I've always wanted to live alone. That sounds so nice. And I'm not an introvert. I love talking to people. So nice. I'm an extrovert for sure. But living alone, it sounds nice because nobody can like wreck up your furniture or anything. But the thing is, it's so hard to find a home, bro. Like, might as well just stay with my parents. And that's fine. Till I get a girlfriend, which that's not happening because I want to get my pilot's license. I'm going so off topic. Getting into the juicy stuff. 22 years old, you know how to manage stress. 37% of U.S. adults report being unable to do anything when they're stressed. Dang. Yeah, imagine being stressed. Never happened to me. At 23 years old, you learn how to do time management. 82% of people don't have a time management system. Really? Huh. You know, the thing is I go to bed late and I wake up late, and I think that's really goofy. I'm trying to wake up earlier, but Jack's just a teenager, and this is what happens. But he's gonna do it, man. Tomorrow. At 24 years old, you learn how to balance work and life. Workers who maintain a healthy work-life balance are 21% more productive. That's my dad and my mom. They're great people. At 25 years old, you learn how to recognize toxic relationships. 1 in 3 young people will be in a harmful or unhealthy relationship. What? 1 in 3? That's horrible. Ah, man. Why is this generation so horrible? Ah, it's not nice, bro. Also, bro. At 26 years old, you learn how to build a professional identity. A professional identity plays a big part in our developing our personal identity. What the hell? Pretty much all my friends are not professional. When you go to Civil Air Patrol, you gotta be professional. At 27 years old, you have to deal with taxes. The average income tax rate in 2021 was 14.9. 14.9. I'm guessing that's a lot. Probably is. 28 years old, you learn how to invest money. 61% of American adults invest in the stock market. 61%. That's a lot. Yeah. Yeah, I know a lot of people that do that. That's cool. That's cool. That's cool. You get hella rich by it too, if you don't lose. At 29 years old, you learn how to do financial planning. 58% of all Americans have less than $1,000 saved for retirement. 58%. Oh my god. Wow, less than 1,000%. That's crazy, man. What? What the? Wow. You guys gotta like help yourself, man. At 30 years old, you learn how to raise a child. Yep, my mom, I think my dad was 30 years old when he had me. Okay, so it says urban parents spend 27% more per child than rural parents. Urban parents, rural parents? What does that mean? Hold on. Okay, so urban parents often favoring. That was weird. Okay. At 35 years old, you learn how to manage a business. Small businesses make up for 90% of all global companies. That is really cool. I've always wanted to start a business. I just don't know what to sell. I thought about selling grass. Not like that, Mom. I mean, like, dry grass, like for fires, because dry grass is so flammable. I don't know, though. I don't know if it'd do well. 40 years old, you know how to become a leader. 50% of CEOs struggle with developing the next generation of leaders. Yeah? Huh. That's pretty interesting. At 65 years old, you learn how to adapt to retirement. Americans live on an average of 20 more years after retiring. That's so weird. You know, the average U.S. When you die is around 78. And in Norway, it's almost close to 90 Americans. I'm an American and proud to be it. Now, at 66 years old, hold on, let me move this a little bit. You understand your life's purpose. No. 80% of people believe that there is an ultimate purpose and a plan for every person's life. Like Joseph Smith. At 67 years old, you'll learn how to do a mentorship. 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 Yeah, mentorship. 76% of people think that mentors are important, but only 30% have one. I have no idea what that is. What is a mentor? No. At 67.5%, 67.5 years old, you learn how to let go. Self-care is an important part of learning to let go. Yeah, Real, man. Letting go of a balloon. That's what they're showing. At 68 years old, you learn how to value time. Valuing time means choosing to spend it wisely. This will help you prioritize your time. Yeah. Alright, guys, we're getting to the very end, and the last one surprised me. Stick to the end. At 68.5 years old, you learn. Oh my god, this light is like killing me. But it's the only way you guys can see me, because if it's out of the way, I look creepy, bro. I look creepy. 68.5 years old, you learn what truly matters. It means focusing on relationships, health, and meaningful experiences. Yeah, man. You gotta be grateful. At 69, oh yeah. At 69 years old, you learn how to deal with slower paces of life. This is taking time to enjoy whatever you're doing. Gotta enjoy to be a kid, man. I mean, 13.7 or so. At 69.5 years old, you learn how to adapt to aging. It means embracing changes, staying active, and maintaining health. Yeah. At 70 years old, are we just like skipping so many years now? At 70 years old, you learn how to leave a legacy because you're dead. People want to leave a legacy because they don't want to feel like their life didn't matter. Okay, yeah, I don't really care if people forget me when I'm older. Yeah, Jack was a kid that played games and went to school, and he didn't really do anything else. And be like, yeah, that's cool. But I suppose people do want to be remembered though. Yeah, for I would too though. Okay, 70 and a half years old, you learn how important family is. So just now you realize how important family is. Okay, family. Family boosts your confidence and provides unconditional love. If you have one of those parents like I do, unless you're Hank. At 71 years old, you learn how to deal with regret. 44% of women have romantic regrets, while 19% of men do. Oh, man. You just like regret who you fell in love with? Damn. Well, she's all old. She ain't looking pretty no more. Man, that's kind of sad. At 72 years old, you learn how to be at peace. Past a certain age, you regret so much that it no longer matters so much. Man, my lips are chapped. I gotta put on some chapstick. Oh, I didn't shake it that much. All this debris just flew in my mouth. That's okay. Man, Burt Bees chapstick, y'all. Check that out. Oh, man, my lips are like cracking. It was so weird. At 75 years old, you learn how to accept death. Death is an unavoidable part of the cycle of life, yet many do everything to avoid it. Bro, if you're trying to avoid death, bro, like, and you're 75, just be like, alright, take me. I'll die. I'll die. I'll do it. Just kill me. Yeah. Yeah, that's around the age of Americans when they die. You know, the oldest person was about 121. It's pretty old. And she actually smoked daily. And she was American. God damn. Well, thank you guys for watching this video. I'm so sorry about the quality. Trust me, this camera is really good. The PC, there's nothing wrong. It's just the resolution on OBS Studios. I don't know how to fix it. I'm gonna watch a YouTube on it. So I know you guys can hear me perfectly. So y'all better subscribe. But anyways, next video will be the scariest phone alerts. So make sure to stay tuned for that. Love y'all. See ya. Well, I don't actually, but bye.